Hi. So I recently did a playthrough of Oblivion Remastered, and it really gave me nostalgia for wanting to go back and play Morrowind, which is a game that I have not touched in well over 20 years. So I remember absolutely loving Morrowind. It's probably in like my top five favorite games of all time, even though I haven't played it in forever. I just remember loving how alien the world felt and how wonderful it was to explore the Vardenfell. So it's almost with a little bit of nervousness that I went back where I was like, is this going to ruin my memories of this game? Because a lot of things from my youth have aged very poorly. So kind of, just diving in and wanted to give an early thoughts video as to how like the first, several hours into the game have gone for me. And I am playing this in a fairly vanilla version. I am using OpenMW just because it makes things smoother, but aside from that, it's pretty much unpatched. At least to this point, original graphics and everything. I kind of want to have that vanilla feel as much as I can. And in the first hour or so, the character models are obviously very dated, if that matters to you. The combat feedback is very bad. It's hard to tell if you've actually hit something. You just literally have to look at their bar to see if you're hitting them or if you're missing. The movement speed is atrocious in this game by modern standards. And despite all that, this game is absolutely, after 20-something years, still phenomenal. I do need to add here that after that first hour, I did absolutely go out and get the Boots of Blinding Speed and get those on to make at least the movement and exploration a little bit more palatable. But aside from that, it's, this semi-blind playthrough where I'm not getting help from external sources, just trying to experience it as close as I can to that kind of original state of the game. And it's great. And one of the things that's really striking me is how good it is to not have hand-holding in a game. For all the effort that went into making the Oblivion remaster look better than the original game, for a lot of the game you're staring at that little green arrow and that red arrow that's telling you where to go for your active quest. You're not actually looking at all the effort that went into making these higher fidelity graphics. You're looking at how many steps till I get to the next place. Or at least, at least half the time my eye is there and it's not on absorbing the environment. And in Morrowind, when you're literally just told to go somewhere and you're looking back in your notebook to see, where are the directions to get to this place again? And I got lost on one of the quests. And it was absolutely great to get lost in this game. So I was doing this Mage's Guild quest in Balmora to find someone who owed dues or something like that. And it just gave me instructions in terms of, here's how you're going to get to the place where this person is. And my eyes just really did this cursory examination of what I had written down in the journal in-game. And I just caught the name of this fort that I was supposed to go past. But in my brain, it's oh, I'm going to that fort. So instead of going where I needed to go, I ended up going to this Dunmer stronghold that I was supposed to run straight past. But because I didn't have that red arrow telling me where to go, I ended up exploring this place and everyone was aggressive inside of it and attacking me. And I'm like, oh man, is one of these going to be this person I'm supposed to talk to? And apparently not. They were just full of hostile enemies that were, well, by the top level, they killed me, which was great. I didn't die in my last playthrough of Oblivion Remastered once I got past the tutorial area. In this optional dungeon I left, it's ooh, there's glass stuff flying around. I picked up a glass dagger or something that I was able to take back and sell for a small fortune. Before I realized, is this the right place? And I went back and read it. It's oh, no, it's not. But that experience is something that's just gone in games today a lot of times. I think I mentioned in my review of Oblivion Remastered about remembering how I got lost in the world of Morrowind. I didn't mean it literally in that case, but it turns out that literally getting lost in this world is fun. And I can stumble into trouble and stuff that kills me. Because the game isn't scaled, there's just stuff that's hard. You can run into, you know, flora and fauna that is way over leveled relative to you, and you'll get your butt kicked in a good way that feels good. When a game tells you come back later by kicking your ass, that's a good thing. Because it feels really good when you do come back later and you're able to take on those challenges. So I want to talk a little bit about art direction versus art fidelity here. Oblivion Remastered very clearly has, you know, relatively good fidelity on the art for the environments. You know, grass looks like grass, trees look like trees, all that. Morrowind is more about the direction, where different cities feel different. And they look different than things you would see in the real world. It looks like a fantasy setting. It looks alien. Oblivion has a few different versions of medieval towns, but Morrowind has a few different versions of alien towns, some of which have like that little bit of familiarity of like, okay, this is kind of like how a medieval town would look, like some of the imperial forts and stuff like that are like that. But all the individual cities and settings all have a different feel and taste to them that's really great. Like the differences between Oblivion cities were like, this is a richer city, this is a poorer city, but they're all kind of fundamentally kind of like, they're building types you would recognize. Whereas the building types in Morrowind, some of them are again, that like truly alien structure that feels totally different and feels like a fantasy setting more than like a copy of history setting. And I love that. And even though it's lower graphical fidelity, the art still looks great, particularly in the environments, you know. The character models and monster models, yeah, they're a little bit dated, but the environments to me still look great. The lighting and the weather effects of traveling through sandstorms, it looks nice to me. I know that's taste, but I like how this game looks. And I think I am surprised by how much I enjoy walking through this world and how nice it looks. And I think it's definitely a case where, because of the quality of the environments and the art direction, where the world itself becomes a character in the game. And that is also a good feeling in a game. I mean, the lands between and Elden Ring look utterly alien in lots of parts of them. Just, you know, the way the spires rise up, the golden tree in the distance, the setting is a character. And that is a very similar feeling here as well, where the world around you is almost a character for you to experience. And you don't get that in games where the setting is a lot more vanilla. At least I don't get that in games where the setting is a lot more vanilla. And I mean, there are other things that are just nice about it too. I mean, the absolute lack of loading screens, maybe it's just that it's that old of a game and modern hardware runs it this quickly, but it just feels so much better and so much more seamless to have a game where you walk into a building and there's no loading screen. It's so much more immersive than watching a pop-up when you go from one area to another. You know, that to me helps with immersion so much more than NPCs having schedules. Which, by the way, side rant, NPCs having schedules is, in a lot of cases, more annoying than it is immersive. You know, you go to a store and you just want to sell stuff, and instead of being able to sell stuff, you have to twiddle your thumbs and wait until the shopkeeper gets back. In Morrowind, they're just there. It's nice, and it makes the gameplay fun. That having to pop up the rest window and watch that slider on a GUI tick down for a few seconds, that is more immersion breaking than the NPC not having a schedule, to me at least. And like everything, there's exceptions to that. I mean, quest-specific schedules I think can be good, you know, when certain activities only happen at night or something like that. But applying it to every shop vendor and things like that throughout the world ends up being a net negative for me, at least in terms of immersion. I like the way Morrowind handled it a lot better, where utility items are always there, but there are still sometimes those nighttime activities like watching the guy hiding stuff in the tree stump at night in Satanin right in the beginning. It's a good balance for achieving immersion. So I haven't even progressed the main plot in this game. I'm just doing guild quests, you know, started in Balmor and then working through like the other cities. Mage's Guild and Fighter's Guild mainly. I also like that in Morrowind, relative to Oblivion, the guilds seem like evil corporations. Like, I feel like when you're in the Mage's Guild in Oblivion, you feel like you're the good guys, and the Necromancers are the bad guys. But in Morrowind, the Mage's Guild is like, yeah, we need money from this guy, we need dues from this guy. You can kill him to get the money. Either way, as long as we get our money. That just seems more like how organizations are in the real world, unfortunately, than, you know, we are fighting evil necromancers, and they are bad and we are good. It's more like, oh, get us our money, we don't care how. I think the Fighters Guild had a quest like that too, where it's like, this guy owes us money, kill him or get the money, you know, either way works for us. Yeah. I like how sinister they feel. I'm also looking forward to the fact that there are more than just the guilds here, you know. I'm gonna probably do the Tribunal Temple, one of the great houses, and go through those progressions as well. The economy is completely broken, and that's okay. I don't care about that, you know. It's actually nice to get attacked by these Dark Brotherhood assassins and be able to sell their gear for a fortune so that I don't have to worry about, like, am I gonna have enough money to trade my skills? There's just always enough money. And that's a very good thing, I think, in terms of, you know, entry barriers into a game. It's a good thing anyways. And that's a little bit different of an experience for me than when I played this game when it first came out, because I kind of played the game and then I didn't play the expansions until later on. So having those Dark Brotherhood assassins show up early on, that's a completely new experience for me. I was a little bit concerned whether or not that was going to be difficult or not, but they're not. They're not that hard. It ends up being more of a benefit than a detriment to be attacked by them. The progression has felt very good. I felt useless in combat at the beginning of the game. I'm kind of a melee character doing a Breton, which is very suboptimal. But, you know, it ramped up pretty quickly in terms of effectiveness as soon as I started getting my skill levels up and my attributes up. Even though my gearing has been pretty much unchanged since the early game, I've been spending my money on training instead of enchanting. I feel better at combat. You know, I'm obviously hitting a lot more as I progress here, and just learning, make fatigue potions, and that helps a ton. The feeling of progression has been pretty solid so far. I feel my character getting stronger, even though I don't see an improvement in their gearing. Progression feels good so far. And I think one of the things that feels oddly nice about how progression feels in this game is miss chances and failure chances, which, as you progress and those get better, that really adds something, as opposed to, you know, the more modern approach of it's just driven by you clicked at the right time and you hit. Miss chances and failure chances can really add to the feeling of power progression in a game. Something I think is a little bit missing too in future games. I feel like maybe it's a little too swung a little too hard towards too much failure early on in this game, but having some level of failure chance when you're not like a master at something, it feels good somehow in terms of the progression, so that you can see that I am getting better at this, I am failing less often. And I'll readily admit that those random mischances and failure chances probably aren't a very popular thing, and that I'm in the minority there. I like them, and, you know, I'm old, so yeah, there. And the fact that training is unlimited just takes a lot of the burden off the feel of leveling up. I don't have to, like, track, has put as much detail into tracking what's happened when I can get to close to leveling up and say, oh, I only have, you know, the GUI shows you right there, I'm going to have like ×3 in endurance. It's like, okay, I need to train up, you know, spear and medium armor, which are minor skills for my character, to get my endurance up to +5 at this level up. The unlimited nature of training, some people may think it takes away from the game. I think it's the opposite. It gives you the option of using it as a money sink instead of making your equipment better. It's not like there's no trade-off to it at all. It just lets you have the option of having a less grindy way of making the game better, where you're trading off, I'm not getting as good of an equipment, but, you know, I am able to optimize my attributes better, and or at least optimize my attributes early on and hold off on doing the equipment part until later. Having that flexibility with unlimited training, I think, works out well. So that was all pretty rambly and all over the place. But yeah, this is just a really quick thoughts video. I was worried that I was gonna think this game felt cringe or bad or something like that. But so far, revisiting Morrowind, a game that I loved 20 years ago, and touching it for the first time in 20 years, I still love this game. At least so far, you know, 10 hours in. I think it's great. If you haven't picked this game up, go do it. Download OpenMW, use it through that, because it just, you know, modern resolution support and stuff like that. But yeah, it's nice to go back and play something from like a long time ago and realize, wow, this is still good. Things that were good a long time ago can still be good. Yeah, highly recommending that you go back and play Morrowind if you've either never played it or you just haven't touched it in forever like me. And I'll probably come back and revisit that with a later thoughts video after kind of going through the entirety of the game and the expansions, just to see if everything's holding up. But so far, man, it is still great after all this time. Thanks for listening to my nostalgic rambling here. Yeah, bye.